Ukraine is preparing to make some difficult decisions, according to Volodymyr Zelensky. So since last week on this platform, I've told you guys multiple times that Ukraine is losing more and more territories on the front. As to what this difficult decision will be, we don't know. But what we know for a fact, right? And I've proven it on this platform countless number of times that Ukraine is losing a lot of territories on the front. So yesterday, Volodymyr Zelensky met with his MPs. Now, this is what I want us to pay attention to. So this was posted by Slav, and this particular news is trending everywhere. So Zelensky met with radar MPs from Servant of People's Party, stating that Ukraine must prepare to make difficult decisions if the situation at the front worsens. Although it was not specified which decision were discussed, Zelensky is assumed to be testing the waters for the transfer of some territories to Russia, as there is no reason to expect victories from Ukraine army. The situation on the lines of contact is not very good and will worsen further, despite Zelensky's promise to hold the front. If you are winning the war, I don't think you will call your MPs to sit and discuss about making any difficult decisions. Let's continue. Let me quote Zelensky here. This is what Zelensky said. As long as the front holds, Ukraine will hope for normal terms of agreement, said Zelensky. According to party spokesperson, the meeting lasted for an hour and a half and discussed issues related to guarantees for Ukraine from Western partners, as well as Kiev preparation for the peace process. So that was what happened in the meeting between Zelensky and his MPs. So let's go to the next story. Wait, before we even go to the next story, guys, hit on the like button. It's very, very important to me. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. The Ukrainian armed forces attacked Belgorod. Note, Belgorod is a Russian-controlled region. Now, we will see more of those attacks. Ukraine will continue to launch some of these attacks into Russian territories, despite them losing. And this is where many people get confused. The fact that, a country is losing in war doesn't mean that they are completely crippled to the point that they cannot fight back. It doesn't work that way. Take Second World War, for example, between America and Japan. Even at a point when Japan decided to surrender, Japan was heavily armed. One of the first tasks that the American government gave it to General McCarthy was to disarm Japan, because even at the time when Japan surrendered, they were still armed. In 1945, when Germany decided to surrender, Germany was armed to the teeth. When Napoleon lost in the Battle of Waterloo, France was still equipped. They still have weapons. The fact that Ukraine can still launch some 1 or 2 drones into Russian territory doesn't mean that Ukrainians can actually continue fighting forever, or it doesn't mean that they are not losing. No, it doesn't work that way. So sometimes before you ask me some of these questions, I think you should make research and understand how wars are fought. Sometimes some of these questions, when they ask me, I realize that, these people who are asking me these questions just don't understand war. They don't know much about war. You understand? Okay, so let's go into the next story. So across the front, Ukrainian defense continue to fail. In Kupyansk, another chaos for the Ukrainian armed forces. Complete chaos and disorganization in Kupyansk. The defense of another key city has failed. Russia troops quickly advanced in Kharkov region. They entered Kupyansk from 2 directions and are consolidating in residential areas. Kyiv media report citing AFU soldiers. So this report even came from the Ukrainian soldiers themselves. This is not coming from the Russians. This is not coming from America. No, this is coming from the Ukrainians themselves. Wow. Interesting time ahead. So even in the West today, there are some people or many experts who don't believe in Ukraine victory again. I'm talking about those who think independently, those who are not controlled by the mainstream narrative, right? Listen to this German officer. Former German military officer Roland Keter said that Ukraine is no longer capable of winning the war on the battlefield. And its situation is becoming extremely critical. According to him, Russia has clearly superiority both in the air and on the ground. A difficult situation is developing near Pokrovsk, where more than 100,000 Russian soldiers are concentrated. The ex-general expects that major offensive could take place before the start of the rainy season in November. Oh, yes, about the Pokrovsk situation. He just reminded me about the Pokrovsk situation. Some people claim that Russian soldiers are being surrounded in Pokrovsk. No, Pokrovsk is becoming a disaster for the Ukrainian armed forces. And the many articles that I've read, it seems like the Russians are preparing for a major offensive in November. Yes, they continue to send more and more troops to Pokrovsk, around 100,000 troops. This is not easy. Sending 100,000 troops to just a particular place means you're planning for something big. To help you understand that figure, when the Russians invaded Ukraine in 2022, whether they invade, whatever you call it, whether special military operation, whether invasion, it's up to you. The Russians went with around 130 something thousand or 140 men to Kiev. And we also the damage that they caused in Kiev in 2022. So Pokrovsk, if care is not taken, Pokrovsk will become a disaster again for the Ukrainian armed forces in the coming days. So today on Mod Russia, I saw one publication there. The West is buying more weapons from the Americans currently, and their main aim is to give these weapons to the Ukrainians. They want to rebuild the Ukrainian army back again, but the reality is there is no amount of weapons that is going to change anything on the front lines. I don't believe so, because Russia has been able to shape their economy to wartime economy, and these guys, it will be very difficult for you to defeat them now. I've said this before, that the only chance the West had to defeat the Russians was in the beginning of the war, when they were sanctioning them left, right, center. Now that the Russians have been able to survive, all these sanctions, what makes you think that they are going to lose today? Now, the West relied on sanctions. They thought sanctioning Russia was going to do everything for them, because that is what they do. If the West is fighting against any country, one of the first things they do is to sanction that country, weakens the country economy, then come in later and fight you. But what they fail to understand is Russia is not one of these small countries. Russia is a superpower. They've been at war, from the beginning, and these guys understand war, so they know how to balance their economy plus war. We all know Putin is a smart guy. When he realized that the West didn't like him or Russia as a country, he decided not to fight with them right away. He decided to prepare the Russian economy ahead of time, and that is why we continue to see the Russians performing excellent despite all the sanctions against them. By the way, I'm not working alone, I'm working with you guys. Do you think these weapons is going to make a big difference on the front line? If yes, type yes in the comment section. If no, type no in the comment section. I love you guys. Shalom. See you guys in the next episode.